In December of 2020, I was told that in 2 months a couple hundred people would be laid off from where I worked, and I was one of them. I'd invested a lot in that job, and it had been a good 5 years, so this is pretty difficult news. But at this point in my life, I was on a CPAP machine every night. I had almost no flexibility, so all my shoes were slip-on, and I'd gotten too big for all of my clothes to fit. I was working remote, so I just bought a bunch of overalls that were like 5, 6XL, something like that. But yeah, I'd wear a dress shirt, something like this, for meetings, because I was full-time remote, and so when I needed to be on camera, I could have a dress shirt on. But I couldn't go up a flight of stairs without a lot of heavy breathing and the inevitable flop sweat that would follow because of how heavy I was. 6 weeks later, I was diagnosed with bacterial bilateral pneumonia and spent a week in the hospital. At first they thought I had COVID because that's what they were seeing a lot of at the time, so they had me on medication for that and tested me a few times while I was there, but turns out I needed very different medication. So I continued to rapidly decline and almost died that first night. My oxygen levels dropped. I came awake actually with a bunch of nurses, maybe like 5, 6 nurses, hovering over me and saying my name and telling me, breathe, John, breathe, rubbing my chest and pressing an oxygen mask to my face. And if it wasn't such a terrifying experience, I might have laughed at the comparison to like a scene out of a movie or a TV show. The one, like a bunch of loud alarm bells start going off, and there's a voice over the speaker saying something like, code bluish green, trauma unit 4 stat, all hands on deck. Okay, so maybe not that last part, but yeah, somewhat comical in hindsight. Thank God for the professionalism of the people who cared for me, because as bad as it was to always feel ashamed of how I looked, now I had my knees taken out from under me, and I had a whole lot of strangers with front row seats. I never saw any of their faces, which somehow made it a little bit worse. Maybe that's just me though, but that was difficult. I was discharged on oxygen with a few spare tanks, and then later that day they came and set up a machine to feed the 75-foot hose they gave me so I could move around my apartment. I weighed 380 pounds, couldn't stand up for 5 minutes without oxygen or I'd pass out. And now I was tethered to an oxygen machine by a hose. This was my rock bottom. I was unemployed, morbidly obese, couldn't breathe without medical help, and despite loving support from family members, I've never felt more alone, and I wanted a permanent escape from what seemed like the end of the line for me. But I found hope, and I want to share that with you. Maybe you're down in that hole right now, staring at yourself in the mirror and experiencing that same feeling that I know so well. Maybe something I went through can help you, and maybe you can find your own path to hope. And if nothing else, maybe my experience will prevent you from doing what left me miserable and a hair's breadth from the edge. So one of the main things that I learned, and what I'm trying to put into practice, is I'm not in competition with anyone but myself, and comparing myself to other people, especially those I looked up to, is a bad habit, and it's one I'm trying to break. It's not fair to them or myself. So now I'm trying to focus on being better than I was yesterday and not worrying about where anyone else is on their journey. So I made this YouTube channel so I can share my story. And thanks for coming to hang out. I hope you stick around, because I will be better than I was yesterday, and I believe you can be too.